Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I thank you very much for having associated the Embassy of the Kingdom of Morocco to participate to your symposium. And I seize this opportunity to express my gratitude to Mr. Donfried and to all of his staff in the ICD. My intervention is focused on Moroccan cultural diplomacy in the African framework. Before to go on, let me address some bases and values of Moroccan cultural diplomacy, which, beside the classical means of diplomacy, have strengthened action led by the state in several fields. As it is well known, Morocco is a country with multi-ethnic society and a rich culture, civilization, etiquette, and great history of above 2,000 years of civilization and more than 14 centuries of the creation of independent states. Each region in Morocco possesses its own uniqueness, which contributes to the national culture. Morocco has set among its top priorities the protection of its diversity and the preservation of its cultural heritage. At each stage of its history, which is very rich and various, Morocco has successfully dealt with the challenges to build a good image in international opinion, the image of modern state, a model of moderation and tolerance. In exploring the meaning of the term of cultural diplomacy, it has been proved that Morocco had used it in practice before it was established like a specific field of activities. According to several political definitions, cultural diplomacy is described as the initiation or facilitation of the exchange of ideas, values, traditions, and other aspects of culture of identity in order to promote national interests, build relationships, or enhance socio-cultural understanding. In short, cultural diplomacy reveals the soul of a nation. And despite the recent establishment of the term cultural diplomacy, evidence of its practice can be seen throughout history and has existed for centuries. Explorers, traders, teachers, and artists can be all considered living examples of informal ambassadors or early cultural diplomats. Obviously, Moroccan history is full of good examples of this practice, and I can quote some cases in the following. The establishment of regular trade route, for example, between Marrakech and Timbuktu and other cities in the south in Africa, has enabled frequent exchange of information and cultural gifts between traders and government representatives for a long time in the past. I can give another example which concerned two explorers and traders who illustrated the same meaning. Ibn Battuta, a famous Moroccan traveler known for his extensive travels over a period of 30 years, he visited most of the known Islamic world, including North Africa, the Horn of Africa, West Africa, a distance surpassing his near contemporary Marco Polo. The second Moroccan explorer and ambassador is Hassan Lewisohn, well known in Europe under the name of Leo Africanus. He was an erudite explorer who was captured by Sicilian pirates, and offered to Pope Leo, to whom he wrote his famous book, Description of Africa. This book was the first and unique source at that epoch on African history and geography, and has inspired a lot of European explorers and travelers. In the field of architectural works and interculturality, I quote, for example, the foundation of the city of Gibraltar by Moroccan dynasty Al-Muhad, who had governed North Africa and Iberian Peninsula in the 12th century. They had in mind that the city of Gibraltar served as a link between the African and European continents. But I could not neglect to address briefly the major components of Moroccan culture and civilization, which are tools of cultural diplomacy, such as music, literature, clothing, cooking, and foods, which are in themselves very rich registers, and they constitute together the Moroccan safe, tangible, and intangible cultural heritage. About writing and books, we can safely say that Morocco has a rich and varied heritage. In this respect, the history holds that the vast library Escorial in Spain contains a large number of books from Morocco, without forgetting to mention, of course, thousands of manuscripts in various fields of knowledge found in several regions of Morocco, and also in some cities in Mauritania, Senegal, or Mali, for example. In short, each component of Moroccan culture is a summary of its evolution over time and its interaction with others. According to the known political aphorism, indicating that policy of a nation is dictated by its geography. Let's observe if this applies to Morocco. Morocco is an Atlantic and Mediterranean nation. It is essentially an Arab and Muslim country, the leader of Sunnite Malikite countries in its region. Its Malikite doctrine radiates in the Maghreb and in Africa. And all these parameters have enabled Morocco to establish old and close relationships, especially with African Muslim countries, where the king, commander of the faithful, Amir al-Mu'minin, is particularly respected. Morocco is at the hinge location between the north and the south, the west and the east, at the gates of Europe and Africa. It is a bridge between two continents. Land transit. It has always been a place of economical, cultural, and religious exchanges of great importance. These geopolitical constant advantages explain the vitality of the Moroccan diplomacy. Morocco, which is the only nation-state area for more than 12 centuries, it is also the only country in the Maghreb that has had for centuries all the relation with sub-Saharan countries. That is why Morocco has developed a typical African policy, which is one of the pillars of Moroccan diplomacy. Africa is the strategic dimension of the kingdom. Since the ancient caravan trade, the Islamization of the countries located in the south of the Sahara has helped to forge strong human and spiritual relationship between Morocco and some African countries. Therefore, as soon it regains its independence in 1955, Morocco has attached great importance to its African relations. Morocco has set Africa as a top priority of its foreign policy. This fact is manifested by the frequency and density of diplomatic tours of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI to some sub-Saharan countries like Mali, Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire, and Guinea-Conakry. These tours were marked by their overall characters, including social, economical, strategic, cultural, and religion fields. As it is aware of its geopolitical importance of that region, the reinforcement of Moroccan position in Africa remains essential, as it could offer the kingdom both economic, diplomatic, and religious dynamism in the region. Morocco has a significant level of trust on the regional and African scenes as on the international scene because it is very involved in the fight against extremism, deviation, and radicalism. In many countries, this level of trust is reinforced by the religious relation. Indeed, it is from Morocco that Islam has penetrated the African region, usually practicing Malikite rites. In a move to promote tolerance and help rebuild Mali, Morocco will provide training to 500 imams from the war-torn country. The new direction of the Moroccan foreign policy, based in particular on the Sud-Sud cooperation, gave a new impetus to bilateral cooperation, especially in the training of foreign managers in Moroccan higher public establishments. Indeed, Morocco has become a favorite destination for foreign students, mostly from sub-Saharan Africa. According to official sources, the total number of foreign students registered is around 9,000, including 7,500 scholarships since the creation of the Moroccan Agency for International Cooperation in 1986. Nearly 21,000 foreign students studied in our country. Among them, 13,900 students come from Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end, I seize this opportunity to wish you every success in your activity, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now we are ready for a few questions.
Yes, please, if you have a question, I will answer in French.
Yes,
Okay.
and you will get it. Just a second, we need another microphone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohamed, for your inspiring paper regarding Moroccan employment of cultural diplomacy in Africa. As much as I appreciate this paper, I have two questions. In the course of your lecture, you said that Africa is the center of Morocco's foreign policy.
It is the
It's one of the priorities.
in the priorities.
It's one of the
yes.
priorities of
yes.
Moroccan foreign policy.
Yes.
Now I want to ask whether Morocco still abide by that principle. Because what occurs to me is on the issue of Western Sahara and Morocco. I can remember that between 1984-85, Morocco had to excuse herself from the then Organization of African Unity because of the recognition of Western Sahara as a sovereign state. Now, that's your position. Is it based on the concept of cultural irredentism or cultural diplomacy? That is one question. Then my second question is that, is Morocco a part of Africa? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, do you want to take a
Yes, okay. By one, okay? I am going to answer you in French, okay? Okay. Tout d'abord, je vous remercie pour votre question. Il concerne normalement à mon niveau, je suis le conseiller culturel et je réponds à peu près dans le domaine qui est de mon ressort. Alors, mais pour vous donner une réponse un peu qui approche vos attentes, le Maroc a été parmi les pionniers, les pays fondateurs de l'Union européenne en 1961. C'était lors du congrès de Casablanca, la conférence de Casablanca. Alors, et quand le problème du Sahara que vous considérez comme un problème international, pour le Maroc, ce n'est pas un problème parce que le Maroc a été colonisé par trois systèmes de colonisation. OK.
I can't do
Ah, OK.
Je peux pas tout faire en même temps.
Okay.
So I'll try my best. First of all, Dr. Kalakhi wanted to thank you for your question and said that it was exactly within his area of competence, as he is the cultural counselor. Cultural attaché. And so this is exactly within his area of expertise. And if I remember correctly, the first point was that Morocco was one of the pioneers in helping found the European Union, thanks to the thanks to the Casablanca Conference of 1961, and that Morocco had been, I'm not sure if the term would be subjugated, but had been witness of 3 different colonization systems, and as such, this was not, I can't remember what was not an issue for Morocco, but that was a point made. Is that,
Okay.
Ça va?
Oui, effectivement. Et dans le même ordre d'idée, le Maroc, quand il a accédé à son indépendance, il a fait de mon mieux pour accompagner et soutenir les pays sous colonisation à l'époque, à partir des années 50, à la mi-50 et à partir des années 60 et 70. Tout au long de son cheminement après l'indépendance politique, il a aidé et soutenu les pays africains qu'il considère comme ses propres partenaires. Et d'ailleurs, j'aimerais bien signaler ici en revenant à l'histoire, il y a une dynastie almorabite, les almorabitines, qui ont gouverné le Maroc pendant le XIe siècle et aussi la péninsule ibérique. Ils ont leur particularité qui est masquée un peu par l'histoire, c'est qu'ils ont été scindés en 2 États. Une qui avait pour vocation le sud de l'Afrique, ça veut dire le sud du Sahara. Il a constitué une entité politique qui n'a pas été encore étudiée et explorée par les historiens. Et la branche du Nord qui a gouverné le Maroc, et ça veut dire l'Afrique du Nord et la péninsule ibérique. Et, OK.
So you'll have to bear with me for this one. First of all, Dr. Kalakhi wanted to make sure that we all know that Morocco, from its process of getting independent from the colonizers in the mid-50s, throughout the 60s and 70s, and all along this sort of path away from colonization, Morocco did its very best to help similar countries who had experienced a similar fate. And Dr. Kalakhi wished to come back to a historical period. We stopped before I know, what the relevance of that period is to the context, but I will say that he wanted to say that there was a dynasty whose name I'm afraid... There we go. That governed Morocco and the Iberic Peninsula during the 11th century. And what was particular about that dynasty, if I understood correctly, was that the states that were under its rule were then divided in 2. So the northern branch, which would correspond, I suppose, to Morocco and how that was governed, and this whole political entity has not, as of yet, been studied by historians. and I think that's where we stopped.
Et je vais me limiter en répondant à une partie parce que je n'ai pas la réponse entière. Je vais vous répondre concernant un principe qui concerne l'Union africaine, l'unité africaine au début de sa création, vers les années 60 et jusqu'à un moment après le retrait du Maroc, parce que l'Union africaine, selon la vision marocaine, politique marocaine, a enfreint le principe qui est dans sa charte. C'est par réaction à une position politique qu'il s'est retiré, en voyant que l'Union africaine a enfreint et violé la charte africaine, en faisant venir un membre qui n'a pas les paramètres d'un État. OK. OK.
Sinon, je m'en sors pas trop. Juste, vous pouvez me dire de quel État est-ce que vous allez parler?
C'est concernant le conflit ça veut dire du Sahara. C'était, oui.
Okay, merci. Dr. Kalakhi says he does not, unfortunately, have the time to answer to the completeness of that question, all of that question, because it's quite a complex issue. So he would like to concentrate on the African Union unity since the 60s. And he says that the official position of the Moroccan government is that the African Union has breached the terms of its chart when it allowed a country, a state that isn't one, the Sahara apparently, to join the African Union.
Okay, that's all.
Vous avez dit que ça vient enfreint la charte, c'est ça?
Oui, c'est ça.
Donc je ne me suis pas trompée.
Non, vous n'êtes pas trompé.
Donc c'est bon?
Oui, c'est bon. Oui.
Okay, thank you. It's not a question. I want to add to your interesting presentation that although Morocco is in the far north, but it has a great impact on the continent, especially the Western and the East African countries, through the migrants and through the Sufi missions. They raise the Islamic knowledge in these countries, and we have in our country a tribe. It is called Moroccan tribe. It is from Morocco. Thank you.
D'accord. Je vous remercie pour votre éclaircissement. Il concerne normalement, et selon comme je l'ai exprimé, j'ai cité un explorateur comme Ibn Battuta. Son livre, qui est essentiel, il a été traduit dans plusieurs langues. Vous traduisez?
Oui, je traduis. So first of all, once again, thank you for your question. Dr. Kalakhi wishes to refer back to the explorer that he talked about earlier, and especially about his book that was very influential in
Ibn Battuta, not the description. Ibn Battuta.
Yeah, I figured as much. Yeah, and has been essential in that process of.
Dans une grande partie de son livre concernant le récit de voyage, il a concentré et focalisé son livre sur le mouvement spirituel joué par des hommes de religion et des saints marocains qui se trouvent même en Égypte. Il y a plusieurs saints qui se trouvent, des mausolées qui sont originaires du Maroc et même en Palestine. Il y a plusieurs personnes qui ont fait ils étaient des soufis. Ils se sont établis que ce soit en Afrique, au Sénégal par exemple, au Mali, ou bien en Libye et en Égypte, et même en Palestine.
Bon, n'hésitez pas à m'interrompre si je me trompe.
Oui, d'accord.
Je suis pas
OK.
And that book was essential because in the large part focused on his travels, that explorer, whose name I'm incapable of saying, focused greatly on religious and spiritual people and exchanges of ideas, if I got that correctly, with in that Sufi community that you mentioned. And so those spiritual persons were present in Egypt as well. Is that what you said?
Yes, in
And
Egypt.
Palestine, and have been
Palestine,
also
oh, yeah.
influential in Mali, Libya,
Yes.
and Senegal.
Senegal, yes,
Senegal?
of course, yeah.
Is
In sub-Saharan countries. Yes. Et pour un peu résumer, pour ne pas m'étendre sur... Il y a même pour les Maldives qui se trouvent en Asie, il y a un récit qui écrit qu'il y a la personne qui les a fait convertir à l'islam, il s'appelait Abul Barakat al-Barbari. Barakat de Amajir. He is coming from Morocco and he was living in the Maldives, and all the people were paganists. Okay.
So similarly, the same kind of travel like story that that in the Maldives in Asia, there's a similar story that the people who were converted to Islam, who were initially pagans, were converted by someone from Morocco, whose name is again for me very foreign. Sorry.
Okay. Abul Barakat. Good.
Do we have other questions?
It's not very culturally related, but I'm interesting. I know that tourism in Morocco is developing more and more, and I myself was there and really like the country. Do you think that the biggest potential of Moroccan economy lies in tourism, and how the government is approaching further development of tourism? Thank you.
Of tourism. Because I am sorry, le tourisme n'est pas de mon ressort parce qu'il rentre dans le département économique. Mais je vais vous signaler une chose concernant le tourisme. Il y a aussi le tourisme spirituel. Le tourisme spirituel, parce qu'il y a une diaspora, une grande diaspora, que ce soit des tariqas, des corporations, tariqa, tizania, ou bien la Sadiliya, sont des corporations religieuses qui ont été fondées au Maroc. Ils ont envoyé des délégations qui ont leurs disciples en Afrique subsaharienne. Okay.
Dr. Kalakhi just wants to establish that this is not his area of expertise. It's tourism it's part of the department for the economic department. But he wishes to talk about spiritual tourism and insists that there is quite an important diaspora of religious corporations which were founded in Morocco and who have sent delegations throughout sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes, that's all. Exact.
Okay, that's it. Some more questions, maybe? Oh, great, thank you.
I did not quite get the answer of the question my colleague asked. He wanted to know whether Morocco is still a part of Africa. And this is the answer. Maybe you answer and I didn't get it. But my point now is regarding the spiritual tourism. I did not get how this operates. What's the mechanism of spiritual tourism?
Okay.
Quel est le mécanisme de...
Yes, of course. Because, comme je viens de le mentionner, le tourisme spirituel, ça veut dire comme un petit pèlerinage, comme il se fait en Europe au Moyen-Âge et même jusqu'à maintenant. Il y a des chrétiens qui vont vers des paroisses où il y a des reliques de saints ou qui ont aidé à la propagation du christianisme. C'est aussi le cas du Maroc, parce qu'il y a un lien indéfectible entre les disciples et les adeptes de quelques corporations religieuses et spirituelles, comme je l'ai indiqué. La Sedilia Tariqa, c'est une secte religieuse. Il est islamique, mais il a une approche plus populaire. OK.
Sorry about the lack of professional skills. The mechanism that you mentioned apparently works kind of similarly to what would happen in Europe in the dark. What would you call it? The Middle Ages. You know, when like castles and people like.
Pèlerinage.
How do you call that? So that would work kind of similarly when people, you know, came to visit on pilgrimages. Thank you. On pilgrimages. I'm sorry, it's not my usual vocabulary, I'm afraid. So when Christians, you know, would go to churches or other sort of religious institutions where relics of saints who had helped, you know, promote the religion would have been. And so this is quite similar to what is happening now, apparently, in Morocco with the diaspora that we mentioned previously, who is not Christian but Islamic, but it works on quite a popular level and helps that way disseminate ideas in a way that would have been similar to, that would have echoed, you know, the Middle Ages.
Yes, but, mais il simplifie. Ça veut dire il simplifie l'islam pour ceux qui n'ont pas la pratique de l'arabe. Normalement, c'est un islam populaire. Il rapproche un peu le corpus religieux de la population qui n'a pas accès à l'arabe ou aux langues classiques pour comprendre un peu le livre saint.
Okay, the main thing about that diaspora is that they help promote Islam and popularize it through by simplifying it and explaining it to people who are not familiar with the Arabic language. And so they simplify the corpus of religious texts in a way that is understandable so that they can promulgate it and like vulgarize it, popularize it.
We have one time for one more question.
Part of our? No. 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 It hopes to regain another time and to adhere to but yes. Mais il attend un peu la situation que s'éclairisse, parce qu'il y avait mésentente entre le Maroc et les pays. C'est sur des principes. Une fois que la situation sera résolue de part et d'autre, et il y a une entente sur les principes, le Maroc n'a pas d'objection à regagner l'Union africaine. Normalement, il a noué des relations avec tous les pays, la plupart des pays africains.
It is not part of it at the moment because of disagreement on core principles. But he believes that that this situation will evolve, and that if it gets resolved, then Morocco has no fundamental objection to joining, as it has very positive relations with member countries.